In the last 4 hours space, from the archive, to the moon and back in the last 6 hours NASA sending a robot helicopter to Mars in 2020 in the last 8 hours NASA to send tiny helicopter to Mars Pasadena-based JPL making tiny helicopter for Mars mission yesterday a tapestry of rippling sand dunes on Mars NASA ready to try flying helicopter on Mars NASA will send an autonomous helicopter to Mars in 2020 in Interstellar First, NASA is sending a helicopter to Mars astronaut gets Purdue degree in space NASA to fly a helicopter on Mars, embarking on interplanetary first NASA's next Mars rover mission to carry tiny helicopter Pasadena's JPL designs first ever Mars chopper for 2020 voyage NASA announces a tiny helicopter will travel to Mars in 2020 video, NASA plans to send a chopper to Mars simulated moon dust leads to cell death and DNA alternation, study says NASA is sending a helicopter to Mars in 2020 Mars exploration, NASA to send helicopter to Red Planet small helicopter will hitch a ride to Mars with NASA's next rover NASA is sending a helicopter to Mars, and here's why NASA to deploy self-flying chopper on 2020 Mars mission see Saturn's rings and 3 moons in Cassini photo meet the UAE Malayali who owns 10 acres land on the moon NASA sending helicopter to Mars, aiming for an aviation first tiny moons make Saturn's rings extra groovy moon dust, new study points to health issues NASA to fly first helicopter on Mars NASA plans to send a chopper to Mars watch, NASA helicopter to fly on Mars during next mission tiny Mars helicopter could make first launch from another planet NASA's wild plan to build McMansions on Mars out of fungus lost asteroid to pass closely May 15 NASA flying helicopter to Mars using remote control NASA is to test first helicopter on Mars NASA is sending its first autonomous helicopter to Mars in 2020 NASA to send helicopter to Mars in landmark test mission NASA prepares self-flying helicopter for 2020 Mars rover mission Ramadan, a month of fasting, starts May 15 for Muslims in Malawi NASA will send autonomous helicopter on Mars 2020 rover NASA to bring a small helicopter to explore Mars NASA will send small autonomous helicopter to Mars in 2020 NASA sending autonomous helicopter to Mars with 2020 rover yes, NASA is actually sending a helicopter to Mars, here's what it will do NASA wants to fly a helicopter on Mars NASA to send helicopter to Mars a helicopter on Mars NASA wants to try NASA plans to send mini helicopter to Mars NASA sending remote-controlled mini helicopter to Mars meet NASA's robot helicopter of Mars, video, Black Hawk on Red Planet, NASA to deploy helicopter on Mars, video, NASA is sending an autonomous helicopter to Mars in 2020 Mars helicopter to fly around Red Planet on NASA's next rover mission NASA is preparing to fly a helicopter on Mars in the last 7 days in an interplanetary first, NASA to fly a helicopter on Mars NASA adds a drone to its 2020 Mars rover NASA sending a helicopter to Mars new images of Jupiter inspire citizens to make art NASA breeze to fly helicopter demo on Mars 2020 this small helicopter will hitch a ride to Mars with NASA's next rover NASA is sending a helicopter to Mars to get a bird's eye view of the planet NASA is sending a helicopter to search the skies over Mars NASA is sending a helicopter to Mars this is NASA's Mars helicopter it's a go NASA will send helicopter to Mars NASA's next Mars rover will have a helicopter on board NASA will send a tiny helicopter to Mars in 2020 NASA just unveiled this awesome, tiny helicopter that will cruise over Mars get to the chopper. NASA is sending a helicopter to Mars in 2020 first carbon-rich asteroid found beyond Neptune the longest lunar eclipse of the century will take place very soon NASA proves helicopter to launch with 2020 Mars rover NASA is sending a helicopter to Mars. That is not a typo. NASA go ahead, Mars 2020 helicopter on board Mars helicopter to fly on NASA's next Red Planet rover mission what it means when the new moon is in your sign War Mind brings the beauty of Mars to center stage the planet Uranus told this ex-NFL star to buy Bitcoin, and he listened.